Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to the continuation of our Science of Triangles work. We have finished the 7 zodiacal triangles. Well, of course, there's so much more to get into there, but at least I think you have an idea of why each one of those signs of the zodiac may be found in relation to a particular ray triangle. And of course, let's be realistic about it. A human being has access to all the rays. A planetary logos to all the rays, a solar logos to all the rays, and certainly a constellational lord. I mean, these constellations are governed by what you call the lord of a constellation. They have all the rays, but there are some that are more, let us say, pronounced than others. So we're going to now look at why certain of them are most prominent. I think we've covered the material to a certain extent. I just want to welcome you before we get going on things and just say here hi to, well, we're waiting for a name there. Oh, yeah, okay, Anne. Hi, Anne, and Anna, and Ariel, and Catherine, and Frederick. Hi, Georgina, Helene, Ishtar, Joan, Johi, Karen, Carrie, Leslie, and Lomesh. Oh, is it a Pathak? I'm not sure which way it goes, okay, but it says here Lomesh Pathak, but welcome. And Mariana, and also Martine, Natni, Nyanka, Risto, and Sandra, Tia, Vicky, Yvonne, and Zenaidi, and Anne Veronica. Welcome to all of you. Glad to see you here. And over here, BL and Michael Stacy are keeping things in order on the other side. And I do want to begin. Lately, there's only 28 days or so, I think it's 28, until the American election. And we have some drastic circumstances occurring involving the COVID virus. We have also a psychological effect, apparently, on the chief executive, who is, as they say, on steroids at the moment, and a kind of erratic process is underway. I've been beginning these programs with Great Invocation number 2. And I think this is a time when it's really necessary, because basically what you find, I think, at the moment is the lords of materialism, if we can call it that. They're throwing a cloud of a veil of glamour over humanity, and especially there are people who are quite susceptible to it. I mean, we all have a lot of sixth ray. We've been through an age of Pisces, an equinoctial age, which has been accompanied by a sixth ray cycle. So certainly it has made its impression upon us. But some people are extremely susceptible to the glamours of the sixth ray. And as DK warned us, he said, well, look, what we have here is a more destructive ray even than the first, if it gets out of hand. And of course, we are getting out of hand here. I believe the reports have come from the FBI and different investigative organizations that the greatest threat to the government of the United States is coming from these militias, which are basically racist, and they're into white supremacy. They're advancing the cause of ignorance, just the way the Nazis did, well, almost 100 years ago when they first got started. You know, we don't have any great massive book burnings going on at the present moment, but we certainly have the exaltation of an ignorant point of view, which is against the globalism which the hierarchy seeks to see accomplished. So we have these forces of darkness which are being fed by expert psychologists on the other side. At least they know enough to really mess things up. And definitely, they're working in the cause of evil, at least in terms of the, excuse me, at least in terms of the manifestation of the divine plan. So we use this second invocation because it's so really powerful and needed at this time. So whether you say it out loud at home with your mute on, or or whether you go along internally with it, then let's do it together. Let the Lords of Liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming, save. Come forth, O Mighty One. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O Mighty One. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O Mighty One. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O Mighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. And I think we've all heard of the guardian wall, by means of which the hierarchy protects humanity, and basically those who are working with the reappearance of the Christ, they are marked out for special protection because it's such a dangerous task, internally dangerous. You know, on the path of occultism, there are many obstacles, and some of them are malicious and deliberate. So, to undertake this kind of internal work is dangerous in a number of, let's say it's not risk-free, you know, and not to be approached lightly. We do see the triangles in this mantram, the great triangle of will, love, and activity. The first three rays, the rays of aspect, light, love, and power, but interesting how death is added to that. And that takes us to the sixth formula that is given in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2. There are certain internal thought forms which have guided a waning civilization, and these thought forms have to be destroyed. It's the death of the internal structuring thought forms that we are talking about here, and the death of the old order, because a new, fresh, and living order is on its way. The order of Aquarius, matter of fact, during the coming age, the whole idea of orders under the seventh ray will be very prominent. You know how various fraternities and sororities or sisterhoods get together under the idea of an order to carry out through ritualistic means their idealistic objectives and see them to be manifested. The Lords of Liberation are three: liberty, equality, fraternity. We refer to them by those names. Of course, that doesn't capture really what they are, but they are associated respectively with Aquarius, liberty, Libra, equality, at least on the monadic level, and fraternity, brotherhood, sisterhood, Gemini. And of course, the coming one here, the mighty one, the rider from the secret place on the white horse of the purified personality is the Christ. And each one of us, if we want to help with this process, we have to carry the purified personality, which is no easy matter. So, you know, I'm offering this mantram. It was also suggested to me by some people who really felt its time had come, and I think they were right. And we'll try to add our little bit here before this election, which is part of the battle for democracy being fought out, as the Tibetan says, in the United States. But I want to say on behalf of humanity being fought out in the United States. So if you haven't memorized this mantram, it's a good time to do it, and to make sure that you repeat it to yourself meaningfully every day, so we can be part of that group of souls that stands with massed intent. Think about the Vulcanian implications there. standing with massed intent as members of the new group of world servers at a dangerous time of psychological instability within humanity. We've got to do our best here as we can. And I'm planning, Tuya and I are planning, and Olivia is very much with this too, to have a meeting in which we discuss the Tibetans' analysis of this mantram and also the previous mantram about the forces of light bringing illumination to mankind. Some very high things are implied there that we may not at first realize. Now I'm going to go on a little bit here. Some reading. We're on page. We really haven't changed our page. We're on page 489, and we've completed, in a sense, the ray triangles. So just take notes if you want to discuss anything particularly. And Michael, would you kindly, or BL, send to Tuya the link here? I have a phone call that I'm not going to answer, but I think something got confused with the links.
Okay, I'll send it to her.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've been looking at these relationships. Certain interesting facts emerge if this tabulation is carefully studied, and let me list some of them for you, leaving you to apply the information as may seem best to you. That's kind of interesting. He's given us quite a bit, hasn't he? And it's just a question of us doing the best we can with it. Okay. So let's go on here. Just got to get this is program 82, I guess. And by the way, you may know that the vice presidential debate is on for tonight. For me, it's 4 in the morning. I have to see if I can do my best under the circumstances. But it will be important to participate, I think, as much as possible in real time, because you can add your thought to the process. I felt that I was able to manage that at the first debate, which was also 4 in the morning. But there was a sense of, being a participant, but I certainly understand how inconvenient it can be for various people in various parts of the world. Okay, this interrelation is effective in this world cycle and will remain so until the end of the Aquarian age. Which one, Is it the lesser equinoctial age of some 2,500 years, or maybe a bit more accurately 2,160? Or is it the Great Platonic Year? Now, and what does he mean by this world cycle? And, to me, when I see a word like that, he's deliberately vague on certain points. this means to me a round. A round where we activate globe after globe after globe, but not necessarily in strictly sequential order. Just like in your chakra system, there's a bit of moving around as to what gets activated. So I think that the different chains, well, the different globes in our fourth chain get activated, not necessarily in rigid sequence, but according to triangles. And so it is, I think, when we're dealing with globes and with chains. I think the theosophical point of view was okay, and it took us as far as we might be able to be taken at the time. But DK has added something quite new in these diagrams of the chains within a planetary scheme, and that was not part of. It was implied in theosophy, but it was not given. Okay, so this interrelation is effective, let's say, in this round, and will remain so. Well, the round has a long way to go. One of the figures given for the duration of a round, and we don't know whether they're all of the same length, is about 300 million years. That's a long time, internal and external. So we would expect it certainly to last until the end of the Aquarian age, whichever age that may be, even if it's 25,000 years. You kind of wonder also, when you consider our solar system and the 6 other solar systems, you kind of think, can that whole cycle of 250,000 years be related to a zodiacal sign? Or does something else characterize it? Okay. So, now we're on page 490. By this I mean that these 7 triangles of energy are today pouring their force through one of the triangles of one of the constellations of each triangle. Now, I've been kind of mentioning that idea as we go along. And we've been told that even though in the 5th ray triangle, Leo is presently the sign through which the 5th ray is mainly pouring, that soon it will be Aquarius. And that fits, of course, if we have triangles in revolution, Aquarius will come to the top, especially during this age of Aquarius. So always a different constellation will be present for a certain amount of time in a dominant position, but we don't know what the duration really is. And that would be one of the secrets involved in the science of cycles. Now today, he says, the following points of the triangles of energy, or the following constellations in the triangles, are the controlling factors. I guess that means they're just more prominent than the others at this time. How amazing it must be to know how these cycles interweave. But these things are all part of what's called the mysteries of initiation, and we have to prove our worthiness to receive these mysteries and have to prove that we are in a position to use them constructively and to guard them and not use them destructively or wantonly. Okay, so the controlling factors. Now, you should be able to, when you think of these ray triangles, you should be able to name not only the ray triangle, but the controlling factor. Ray 1, Aries. This constellation, as might be expected, is the source of the initial energy producing the new age. Now, it's not the age of Aries, of course, and basically we left the lesser age of Aries some time ago when the Christ was making his appearance in Palestine. That old dispensation was fading, although he has said that the Jewish group has maintained it, I guess, inappropriately or stubbornly or somehow in a fixated manner. But one sees already changes along that line. So this is your most powerful first ray constellation at this time. And when you read The Destiny of the Nations, you understand that the rays coming through the various signs, constellations associated with any country are of importance, and thus it will be. He did say at some point that whatever your ray may be, when you're under the influence of Aries, it strengthens your will. Now, it doesn't mean that that you have to be a first ray soul or first ray personality, or that your ray chart is necessarily including the first ray. But it does mean that if that sign is in your horoscope, there's quite a powerful conduit for the first ray and the will. So there are many subsidiary factors which round out our estimation of the energies we have available to us. And when your horoscope is interpreted, esoterically at least, those indirect factors have to be taken into consideration. So basically, there's an impulse here. Ray 1 always has to do with taking the plunge and beginning something, entering into something with a degree of courage and will force. And apparently, although Aries does not feature into the major constellations associated with the New Age, it is impulsively effective in getting things going. So the initiating energy, basically, now you know about the initiating energy. Right now, it is Capricorn, quite strongly. The great sign of initiation is Capricorn. However, at a future time, and he doesn't tell us when, but after the planet has made more progress, let us say, Aries will be the sign of initiation. Now, that's not going to be in our lifetime, nor for, I guess, millennia. I mean, it's a long time away. But Capricorn will give way to Aries, just the way right now Aries traces a line of development to Capricorn. So that day will come. And Leo and Capricorn play secondary roles at this time. Aries connected with the will to create. Notice always the will. Leo with the will to fulfillment, and Capricorn with the will that conquers death. They're all important, but apparently a new form of creativity involving the throat center and the first initiation is on the horizon for humanity. Now, I realize, I've mentioned these things before, but it's always good to see the way DK mentions them. Ray 2, Virgo. That's the controlling factor at this time. One might be surprised when one thinks of Pisces, which is such a cosmic decanate related to the Christ. But at least at this time, it is Virgo, it's the individual Christ. This constellation produces the increased activity of the Christ principle in the heart of humanity. And you see how different this is from ordinary astrology, with its emphasis more on what Virgo represented in the previous solar system: materialism, intelligence, order, and so forth. Now it's very much a 2-6 constellation, and here we are at the dawn of the first initiation of humanity, which is the awakening of the Christ principle in the heart of many, many human beings. And we can see then how important Virgo would be. So when we're talking about the reappearance of the Christ and its deeper understanding and the coming forth of this wisdom which hierarchy would bring, because the light of wisdom is very much connected with Virgo, we can see how important the sign is. The planetary logos is going through a period when its second ray, soul, is emerging. And the Virgo energy, an ancient sign really, so powerful in the last part of the previous major solar system, but powerful in a different way. Virgo is prominent in the emergence of the soul of the planetary logos, and when humanity develops its eventual second ray soul, we can see that humanity will be a conduit for the soul of the planet. As a matter of fact, sometimes I think humanity is very much in its rays like that, the planetary logos, 1, 2, 3. I've somehow thought at times that humanity evolving through destruction differently than the devas through building may have a first ray monad. I mean, we're not going to ever have a situation where we have a soul ray without a monadic ray. So, given the world's soul, the second ray is the second aspect of this anima mundi, the soul of the world. And we must begin to use Virgo in a way that releases us from its habitual use, which is expressed in the mantra, let matter reign. We know how very materialistic the unevolved Virgo can be. I wonder what it says over here in I always try to turn here to one of my favorite pages, and here it is. The germinating energy, the mother force. Well, we know from some of the old commentary that we must leave the mother for the father, and that is reflected in the initiatory rites, even of some relatively, well, I don't want to use the word primitive, because they have such knowledge, but let's just say archetypal cultures. They're close to the mother, but come the age of 12 or 13, and usually, unfortunately, at least at the present time, it's for men mostly, there is a leaving of the mother and the going towards the lodge of the fathers, and that is displayed. And if I could find it, I probably can't, but the whole idea is we have to flee the arms of the mother at a certain point as we reach towards the father. Of course, later, we as the sun aspect, whether you're a man or a woman, it's still the, in a way, sun, second aspect, son, perhaps, we unite them all. And what we see here about Virgo is called the Christ activity for disciples and for initiates, and it's called the light. He differentiates, you may remember, between the light of knowledge, which is Taurian, and the light of wisdom, which has to do with Virgo. So we are at that point when any real germination of the inner light, I am the light of the world, the Christ principle, is of value. And this is a very important sign. Even though it was important anciently, it's very important now. So Virgo, if you're dealing with a client who has prominent Virgo, let's say Virgo rising, this is the goal of the soul, to produce an increase of the Christ activity, of the Christ principle in the heart of the individual, whether or the nation or humanity as a whole. Now, when it comes to Cancer, Ray 3 governs, but only in the larger sense. It doesn't necessarily govern that way for disciples. Maybe more Capricorn, you might say, is the governing sign, but DK gives us Cancer, the mass movement. Think of it now, because even though it is not cultured in the same way as the student of the inner things would have a kind of an enculturation, the mass is moving in its intelligence together. Maybe it's called the proletariat, And of course, that's the danger when it's interpreted too literally, and Virgo and Cancer are as representative of the mass, you might say, exalted above the signs of initiatic enculturation or cultivation. The mass movement towards liberty, the release of light, so dominant today, is caused by this energy. And, it's very interesting. This particular Cancerian energy is associated with an aspect of the divine will which is called the will to evolve. Let's see if I can remember how it goes. Well, Aries is the will to initiate, and that's Ray 1, I guess, the will to initiate, yeah. And Ray 2, it's the will to coherence, and this is, in a way, a will to evolution or towards education. Then we have the will to harmony. I'm forgetting the fifth ray type of will, but they're all listed, and maybe
Will to act.
will to act. Yeah, okay. I was going to just ask you if you could find it. The will to act, and then the sixth ray will, the will to. Does it say?
Cause.
Cause. That's correct. And then the will to organize. Is that it, or manifest, or something like that? For the seventh
Express.
ray. Express. Yeah. Okay. Well, those 7 types of will can be associated with the various signs. And this movement towards liberty and increasing light. Remember, Cancer is associated with the dark light of matter, which must become illumined. We have certain meditations where we visualize the hierarchy and or the Christ sending light into the dim light of humanity and the slightly brighter light of the new group of world servers. There is an illumining of the darkness. In that light we shall see what? A greater light. In that light we shall see light. So, okay, Cancer is this gradual movement towards lighted, loving liberty, we might say. And our educational movements are caused, or at least impulsed, by this. So, what have I got here? That there is a Neptunian correlation with liberty. Wait a second. Liberty, Uranian, and release, Neptunian, and the light, Neptunian. Well, those are speculations, but Neptune, which is the major ruler of Cancer, is called the god of reasoning. I think that's very interesting because so often with Neptune, it's just intuitive. But what he does mean, I think, here is the access to pure reason or intuition found on the Buddhic plane. Now, he did say that for disciples, however, and initiates, the major sign for the third ray is Capricorn. And that makes sense, of course, because there is a more intensely focused and conscious cultivation of the qualities which must be demonstrated for initiation to occur. But let's just say the mass is moving, and the mass is moving towards the light and freedom from the strictly Davic world and freedom from the dense physical body. On TV maybe, and so often on the computer, it's all about the body, the body, the body. We really fixated there. And Cancer is part of that, especially it's number 4, you might say. So you have Aries, lower mind. It's more than that, of course. We have Taurus, the desire nature. We have Gemini, the etheric nature. And we have Cancer, the dense physical body, especially as ruled by the non-sacred planet, the moon. Okay, well, I at least want to get through these, Now, Ray 4, Scorpio. That is the major sign, and it is humanity's sign. Well, humanity has a number of signs. Sometimes Leo is called the most human of all the signs, but there's no question that the human monads are found under Scorpio, under Mercury, and expressing on the Buddhic plane. Now, we may, as monads, originate from the monadic plane, but our major intended area of expression is on the Buddhic plane. And in order for that to happen, a great battle will occur in the life of the gradually ascending initiate, Scorpio. Through this constellation comes the testing of humanity, the world disciple. Now, the whole battle between the angel of the presence and the dweller on the threshold is scorpionic. From another point of view, the entire dweller is scorpionic, and the angel of the presence represents Capricorn or maybe Leo, the great sun of illumination fighting against the darkness of form, at first indicated by Scorpio. Later, of course, how interesting in terms of meditation, when we reach Scorpio, it's called illumination. Scorpio, illumination, just like Taurus. So we have Leo, concentration; Virgo, meditation; Libra, contemplation; Scorpio, illumination; Sagittarius, inspiration; Capricorn, initiation. And through all of those steps, we must learn to pass. So are we being tested right now? Yes, we are. All throughout the 20th century, we saw the recrudescence of the Great Atlantean War with under its Scorpio aspect. And even the leaders on both sides were the same. I think that's really interesting. You fight a battle 4 million years ago, and then you come back and you fight another one. The first one under Libra, then 4 million years later, the next one under Scorpio. And is the battle over? Well, not yet, but humanity will be triumphant. Okay, so we are certainly a warring kingdom, we might say, and the fourth creative hierarchy of human monads, called the initiates, are functioning under Scorpio, under Mercury, and their destined focus is the Buddhic plane. And think of it, even right now, the solar angel, who was a human being in the previous solar system, works from the Buddhic plane largely, and then projects into the higher mental plane as the angel of the presence. Okay, Leo. This sign produces the growth of individualism and of self-consciousness. That's Ray 5 Leo, so prevalent today on a world scale. He doesn't get into the fact that Aquarius will succeed Leo. But Leo discriminates between self and not self. And more people are learning to do that rather than simply blending with what the senses present. They become separated from their perceptions, and that's a stage and an important one. So they journey out of the participation mystique. they get out of the mystic participation into a centralization, which we call individualization, and grow eventually after 3 million years into self-consciousness. And more today, this represents the growth of personality consciousness. And Array 5, interestingly enough, rules what's called the law of cleavages. So it produces negatively a cleavage, a separation between one human being and another, so that each perceives itself to be different and unique. Well, that's a stage, of course, it's important. But eventually, three minds unite under the fifth ray, and we begin to see that we're all minds within the one soul. And the fifth ray scientifically will contribute to that. It's amazing, how scientific many Leo people can be. Some very important discoveries have been made by fifth ray Leonian types. So eventually Aquarius, but now separation, distinction, uniqueness, all the products of the growing from the stage of individualism or individualization. At first, it's interesting. Individualism is a very divided state. When it comes to individuality, that's a different thing. It's non-divisible, and scientifically that will be proven under the fifth ray. But a very important sign for humanity as a whole. And in the fifth petal of the egoic lotus, the battle between Leo and Scorpio is taking place. It's a Scorpio-Leo petal, and eventually, actually, Scorpio wins that particular battle. At least it helps the individual divest himself or herself from egotism. When it comes to ray 6, well, it is Sagittarius, and the major ray 6 sign, the controlling factor. This sign produces the focused, one-pointed effort of the world aspirant. Now we're about to become the world initiate. We're about to, in a way, move from Sagittarius, the aspirant, into Capricorn, the initiate. But, well, from another point of view, Sagittarius rules the first two initiations, and Capricorn the third. So this is the ninth petal of the egoic lotus, leading into, finally, the third degree. But there's probably a phase before each initiation where you're treading the burning ground and you have a keen vision of what lies ahead. So it's almost as if every one of the first three initiations has a Sagittarius Capricorn, Sagittarius Capricorn, Sagittarius Capricorn segue from aspiration and idealism and envisioning of the possibilities into Capricornian accomplishment. Now, Sagittarius can be very fanatical. And the two countries that we are familiar with, where the Inquisition was most prominent, are Italy and Spain. Spain and Italy. And Sagittarius rules the soul of Spain and the personality of Italy, and they are both sixth ray souls. So let's just say you focus all your forces. At first, Sagittarius may scatter many things, but eventually focus all the forces, become one-pointed, the one-pointed aspirant, the one-pointed disciple, and eventually the one-pointed initiate also, because there's always going to be aspiration towards the next mountain peak, the next stage of accomplishment. And that aspiration under the burning Martian sixth ray will be Sagittarian in nature. So the sixth ray is coming in also under Virgo and under Pisces, but at the present time, given the triangles in revolution, it is the most controlling factor. That's why some people, have said, look, the chart of the United States does not have Gemini rising. It has Sagittarius rising because of the religious tendencies and the whole idea of journeying afar from all the different countries to find yourself in the United States. And then, of course, many negativities going along with that, and feeling that one has the right to take over the native populations and deal with them very harshly. There's karma in that, heavy karma, and it is being paid and will be paid. Ray 7, it's Capricorn, and there you have the perfect form. The DK says the Capricornian energy produces initiation and eventually, look, the overcoming of materialism. It's the most materialistic sign, and it's the sign by means of which we overcome materialism. It's the diamond, okay? The inverted mountain and the upright mountain. So it's an elevation, and it rules the law of elevation, which is the fifth ray of the soul, esoterically considered. It's also called the law of group progress, the door into life of those who know no death. And yet, if it's a sign under which much evil is worked, because it is possible for so much materialism to be associated with it. Now, those are the major signs at this time through which the rays come. They all come through two others as well, but this is the major focus. And I think, if we looked at the best functioning of each of these, we would find a kind of humanity that is highly desirable, filled with initiative and daring, patient in cultivating the inner love, moving everyone along towards the light, fighting the battle and overcoming the lower tendencies, building up one's individuality, well, until it really becomes individuality, building up the brilliance of the soul and expressing it creatively, aspiring to the next mountain peak and achieving that elevation through Capricorn and not just getting stuck on the lower levels, which is also unfortunately possible. If you look at history, there's some pretty rough characters that are found with a prominent um, Capricorn. I don't even want to mention them, but they have done some awful things. And that's because, as DK says, they can be hard and materialistic. So the seventh ray can crystallize them into the lower worlds. Anyway, this looks like the end of Science of Triangles 82, and what page are we on here? 490. Looks like 490. We've made a page of progress. Are we ever moving? And now let's, the next opportunity to discuss things will be number 83, and it should be on the 14th, and it will be a morning work and 5 a.m. Okay. Right, so what we've basically done over the last several times is we've looked at the triangles that bring in particular rays. Now we've looked closely at the particular constellation within any triangle that brings in the most of that ray at this time and is the controlling factor. And obviously, if we have any of these in our chart, we want to use it properly in the way that DK indicates. All right, so now we're at the point where we can take your thoughts, questions, whatever you have about what we've been speaking about here, or later, if there is a little bit later, whatever issue in occultism you might be interested in discussing. So let's see, who's handling this? BL, are you, or is Michael?
I am, and I don't see any questions right now.
Okay, would anybody like to speak? Okay, or I know how to get the hands raised, but first I'll give you a chance if you want to, if anything seemed worth discussing to you. We will, give it a little pause. When I think of my own horoscope, obviously we're going to have these signs, and it's just a question of how do we use them and how much of a particular ray do they bring in. Now, sometimes one will have 2 out of 3 and not all 3. Sometimes one will just have a single sign, but if that single sign, let's say that the only 6th ray sign you have in your chart is Sagittarius on the Ascendant. Well, because it is the Ascendant, it's going to be powerful. And that, you might not have any Virgo, you might not have any Pisces, but the Sagittarius itself will be enough to bring in a very strong representation of the 6th ray. So I guess my next question will be, what I've been doing is, there's Vicky. Okay, I'm having a hard time connecting Cancer with, well, it's the movement towards liberation. It's not real liberation, not yet. But remember, how Cancer can be used in connection with Neptune, with the mantra, the whole is seen as one, and that is liberation. I always associate Uranus, yes, that's a planet of liberation. Look, let's just say there are many kinds of ways to gain freedom. We could probably go over every planet, and we could find a way in which, rightly used, it contributes to greater freedom of the individual. Of Christ, who was in a way Neptune, they say he knew what was in man. In other words, he had such an intuitive grasp that he was no longer confined by an apparent outer barrier. He could contemplatively slip into your psyche and know exactly what is there. And DK, of course, does the same thing with the Dinah letters. So Cancer, every sign of the zodiac can further the process of liberation, okay? And Cancer is this mass movement by which the dark light seeks greater illumination. So it's more the mass urge towards illumination. But you have, the Dalai Lama is a Cancerian, isn't he? With Libra rising, right? Or at least that's what usually is given to him. And there is such a capacity to embrace and see and understand wholeness, and not isolation. At first, Cancer is all about isolation, and yet the crowd exists. But later, it's all about a great kind of all-pervasive inclusiveness, which certainly is liberating. Now, in this video book that I have available on Makara, I guess, or wherever it's available, maybe also on YouTube. I talk about every sign in terms of its potentials to lead us into greater freedom. The moon part of Cancer, you're absolutely correct. There's no liberation in it. It's being stuck via rotary motion in the past. But when a person raises the consciousness and begins to perceive a wholeness without internal boundaries, that is a liberative state, and it's very Neptunian Cancerian. So the main thing there, Vicky, to me, is to interpret the signs of the zodiac on various levels and to see which are the confining levels and which are the levels that bring us toward the greater light and love and power, which such levels always exist. And every sign contributes to liberation. Basically, we were talking about education and the mass movement towards the light. That's how we're discussing it today. Okay, what if the moon is in Capricorn? Does it correlate with the throat? Well, it basically is a kind of pattern that is rotary and sometimes rigid, which has to be broken. It's a very responsible pattern. I wouldn't say it's necessarily correlated with the throat. The two planets correlated with the throat are Saturn and the Earth. And, so I can see why you might say Saturn, Capricorn, throat center. But generally speaking, the moon represents physical patterning, and in this case, repetitive and rigid physical patterning, very responsible, but not exactly the most joyful position until we discover the planet that the moon is veiling. Now, for advancing students of occultism, except in the case of Virgo and Taurus, that planet is generally not Vulcan, which represents the physical body. For the mystically inclined, it's Neptune, and for the occultly inclined, it's going to be Uranus, and that is another matter. Uranus does eventually rule the throat because the seventh ray of Uranus takes over the throat center around the time of the first initiation. And so it's interesting that the throat center, which is so mental in a way, it can be associated with a rare appearance of the seventh ray in the mind. DK, in Rays and Initiations, he talks about the seventh ray mind appearing at the time of the first initiation. So there's seventh ray and the throat. But the moon in Capricorn has a larger personal implication that we have to break certain myopic patterns of response which are holding us in prison because of fear. I know some people who have done wonderful things with the moon in Capricorn, and they've learned to use it, and they've overcome that fear of stepping out of the pattern. Rotary motion can be a friend that stabilizes things, but if you stay with it too long, and remember Capricorn does bring in the third ray, if you stay with rotary motion too long, you do not advance. You do not take the upward spiral. Okay, now, basically what I've done here, I've said none of this is really about your particular chart. This is just, it all depends on how far you've gone on the path, how we interpret these particular sign positions. But as we know, the moon in Virgo, its type of rotary motion is materialism. So let matter reign. And of course, it can be very good. But at first, it may simply be caught in the circumstantial detail. Later, when we start to look at it as the esoteric ruler of the moon, we begin to ask, does it veil Vulcan or does it veil Neptune? Generally, those are the two planets veiled by the moon, and in Virgo, and we have a lot of ability with matter on the physical plane, and we also have the stirrings of the Christ consciousness. See, this is so interesting. The two signs of the previous solar system, Virgo and Cancer, are both here. And the element of responsive emotion, of the feelings, is strongly stimulated. Now just imagine that the moon veils Neptune in the case of it being in Virgo and not Vulcan. I have seen, different people who have the emphasis one way or another. Sometimes with the moon in Virgo, a person can be terrific with their hands, handicraft, and how the power of the hand to build and to correct and to fix, to deal with matter. But other people are much more of the Neptunian sort. Well, the Sun in Cancer will also emphasize Neptune. It will emphasize access to the feelings and the building up of the feeling nature, so that a person becomes really more sensitive rather than so much focused within matter. Then, and of course, well, maybe I should say it, it's possible to have the same sun sign for a number of lives, and the same rising sign for, he seems to imply, up till 9 lives, something like that. So, when you look at the 29th degree of anything, it's near the end of the cycle. It's called the critical degree. But now Sagittarius is very different and very, shall we say, expansive. Now, the moon in Virgo, it's holding, it's cherishing, it's looking at a specific area of life. It's not, it's more introverted sign. Cancer too brings that indwelling, a kind of concentration on what is found within the particular embrace of the individual in the personality sense, the the base of operations, the near ones, the dear ones, the close ones. Things are close with Virgo and Cancer, unless, of course, we're really dealing with that expansive idea of the Cancerian initiate, like the Dalai Lama, whose whole family is humanity, we might say. But for the average person, it's the near and dear. And Sagittarius breaks through that. Sagittarius says there surely must be more than what is held so close. And so one begins a divine adventure toward things which are not so familiar, not so familiar, and reaches into heights, reaches toward the mountain, towards the vision, and it's an entirely more transporting energy. Now, I'm saying this is not necessarily you. I'm just making a general statement here. It all depends on how advanced the person is in their form, how the different positions will be used. You could get somebody in this combination who never wants to get out of the kitchen. When we talk about Virgo and Cancer, everything is very compressed within the home life. Just break through via the Sagittarius. Okay, no, I didn't say the U.S. There are some people who say the U.S. has Sagittarius rising. There's also another chart with Gemini rising, and I tend to use that one. It all depends on when you think the Declaration of Independence was finally signed. Was it signed, late in the afternoon on July 4th? Was it signed early in the morning? Because actually, Gemini would have come up before Cancer. And people argue about this. And they say, well, there's such a religious culture on the sixth ray personality of the United States. The Sagittarius is a likely rising sign. And they also say that Sagittarius correlates with the particular time they think that the Declaration of Independence was signed. And they argue about this. But the Tibetan has given Gemini as the personality, And then Aquarius would be the soul sign. It's more than a rising sign, but that's one way we tend to look at it. I oftentimes use the Gemini chart, but there are astrologers that will come along and say, look how the Sagittarius chart makes sense. So I would say that there's still, a battle going on between what is correct. The Tibetan gives two signs: Aquarius soul, Gemini personality. The world is hurt everywhere. I think it's. I think there's a lot of the misuse of the concrete mind. Yes, there is, and the world is hurt in its heart too. Or let's just say the world has an inflamed solar plexus. And this makes it, when I say the world, I mean, well, humanity. I'm not talking about the other kingdoms necessarily. The solar plexus is subject to glamour and is in an inflamed Martian condition. What is needed is Neptune, which rules the higher point in the solar plexus. There are 2 points, a Martian and a Neptunian point, and we need to ascribe to the 6th ray of Neptune more than the warlike 6th ray. By the way, our present chief executive has Mars 6th ray on the ascendant. So I was reading a psychological analysis of this today from one of the psychiatrists who put together a very interesting book about violence. And there's a lot of, at least unconscious sadism that is going into this whole process. And the next few weeks may be the witness to this. It could be a quite terrible thing. Okay, going on. Why would you have the same rising sign is the question here from Yvonne, looks like, for 9 lives, or did it say 7? Let me see where I am. 7 lives. Let me see if I can find it. The place where this might be located. I'll put this down here. And I don't know if I can, I'm not sure that this will come up correctly. No, it's not coming up for me. Or maybe it's 7 lives, as lives are passed. Either 1, 7 solar systems. Oh, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be able to find it, but it's in the introduction to Esoteric Astrology, and let's see, rising sign 9. Let's try this. 7, and let's try that. Ah, look at this. I was wrong about 9, but the idea is there. The rising sign, in a small measure, this indicates the life goal for that particular life cycle, or else over a period of 7 lives. So the last 2 constitute the greater zodiac. So the simple answer, which is not to say, definitely the only answer, is that there's so much to be accomplished in a particular sign of the zodiac. There are 3 decanates. There are 12 dwads. What happens is if you divide 30 degrees by 12, you get 2.5 degrees. So, and each one of them is assigned one of the signs of the zodiac. So you can be born, let's say, a rising sign here, because he seems to mention, well, he says you can have the same ray for the personality ray for a number of lives going, and especially artistically inclined people tend to have that. And then he gives this thing that we have here on page, what is it, page 32 or 31? And here he's telling about how the different factors affect the individual, and the rising sign might operate over a period of 7 lives until you gather from it the full impartation of what can be learned, what can be achieved under that rising sign. And that's the simple reason. You cannot get as much of the sign's influence as you need if you're just born once. And so generally the idea is that you're born in the early part of the rising sign in the beginning stages. And after you have more experience, you're born with the later part rising. Now, that is a speculation. He never said so, but he said over a period of 7 lives. And that is a very interesting statement, and seems to imply that we can, just the way we can maintain the same personality ray for a number of lives running, we can maintain also the same rising sign, and it doesn't mean that we will. We can be born the next life with a different rising sign, but under the circumstances that the soul determines, it may be that a whole curriculum under a particular rising sign is deemed as useful for that particular individual. And then the solar angel will see to it, that that birth occurs in that way. Now, if the birth is interrupted or there's some other problem, there's always enough to gather no matter what is given to you astrologically. We have so much to make up for, we have so much to fulfill, that even though it might not be exactly targeted the way the soul intends because of some kind of interference, that we still can benefit no matter what hand we are dealt, so to speak. So basically, to gather what the rising sign has to offer. Okay, now, going on here a little bit, as long as I've got it in front of me. And who knows, maybe, it could be 9 incarnations, but it says a period of 7 lives. Now, when we can do internal, psychospiritual, psychic research of an accurate nature, like the Tibetan can, we will be able to see how that works. He talked to one of his advanced disciples, RSU, who was for the Tibetan, or was for Alice Bailey, sort of a second in command at the New York headquarters, and she was the editor of all of the books, at least up to a certain point. And what did, the Tibetan said to her, you would be very surprised if you could see yourself 5 lives ago. Meaning that somehow the position she was in now would not be anticipated from the position she was in, or he, whatever, 5 lives ago. So they think in very big terms. They see ahead. They see ahead what the developmental process could be. And then they can see backwards too. Okay, a little bit more here. As long as I've got it in front of me here. Someday it would be so wonderful if we could list all the mantrams in AAB's blue books and closely examine each line using all the keys of the ancient wisdom, astrology, rheology, numerology, correspondence, just like sound, color, shape. Sounds like you are setting a task for yourself. I remember when I said, "Whoa, one day we'll really be able to study the 7 rays and look at what may be ray charts, and we may be able to have instruments that help us determine rays." And I said, "Well, next life." And before I knew it, within a very short time, it had materialized in this life. So sometimes when we think we're looking far ahead, it can happen sooner than you think. Also, there are obviously collections of all DK's mantrams in the same place, or at least handy enough to put together in some kind of order. Now, basically, it's a second-rate thing you're looking at here. You would like to look at everything that is said according to spiritual numerals and the different ways of interpreting. Basically, you're talking about keys to the secret doctrine. What kind of key shall we turn? Will it be mathematical, astronomical, astrological, psychological? Somewhere in one of the footnotes, when we study cosmic fire, it gives quite a number of keys that you might turn. And here you're using the mantrams as the basis and saying, with what particular occult factors do these lines correlate? It's a pure reason kind of pursuit that you are talking about. Okay, that way we could ruminate on the many levels of meanings, which we may say every day. Well, when a person gets an idea about what it might be nice to have, wouldn't it be great to have? They are oftentimes giving themselves an assignment to make sure it happens. So be careful what you wish for. You may be the doer. At least get the process started. That's what I've seen anyway. And when a person, a hint comes to you from what you're reading, and you say, "Wow, I wonder how we could follow that out farther," it may be yours to do. Okay, BL, are there any? Anybody who wants to talk particularly? Or most of these?
I don't see any hands or anything else.
This is stuff written down here. Well, when we're dealing with an astrology book, of course, we're going to get into astrology. But I think you can see, once you know something specific about an item, it can be a tiny center or a greater center, a still greater center of energy. You can begin to arrange these things in triangular form. Let's just say that in terms of the structure of our local cosmos, triangulation is really important. Now, DK did talk about an etheric body of interlocking circles, or maybe spheres, I don't know, that characterizes the etheric body of the sun. And probably that whole idea of interlocking spheres is characteristic of the advanced beings. But on the way from squares to spheres or circles, but it's got to be a sphere, I think. On the way comes the triangle, and that's where we are now. Sometimes the soul itself is called the triangle. Our studies are largely soul studies. They are not yet totally spirit studies, not yet. We're just emerging out of the square of the personality, and so the triangle is the important dimension for us to contemplate. So one of the things we're going to do before long is to, I might give you a process, and you might tell me what kind of triangle might be associated with that process, whether it's a triangle of planets or a triangle of signs or a triangle of chakras. I might say, well, what triangle would represent man ruled from the astral plane? Well, you might go to page 170 or so, right around there in Cosmic Fire, and you would find DK's triangle for man ruled from the astral plane. And you might want to explain why that is so. So first comes the kind of fifth ray examination of the individual item. And then comes the divine patterning occurring on the third ray and also on the second ray. And we'll get more flexibility as we go. And we'll be able to see how different centers of energy might contribute to the processes with which we are involved. Maybe I've used this example before. Well, I've used a lot of examples before, but what triangle would you give me to portray the first three personality vehicles of man, excluding the dense physical body? And you would probably end up saying at some point, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, the three subjective signs in one respect. Aries would be the lower mind, Taurus the desire nature, and Gemini the etheric body. So we would have a pattern, and what particular triangle would represent that pattern? If I, say to you, what triangle would represent the overcoming of selfishness leading to the state of discipleship? Now, there might be a number of answers there, but I could give you a triangle which consisted of Leo, Libra, and Scorpio. And would you understand why I would offer those three? Or maybe I might give you Leo, Libra, and Sagittarius, equally as good in a slightly different way. The sign of individualism leading to Libra, where the sun falls, meaning the normal personality egotism is reduced strongly, leading to the challenges which, when overcome in Scorpio, make the individual the triumphant disciple, or Sagittarius, the one-pointed disciple. You see? So we're surrounded, or we're involved with all kinds of processes, all kinds. And usually underlying these various processes, these battles, these beginning points and middle points and points of emergence, there's a triangle. And we have to know enough about what a sign, a planet, whatever, a ray can contribute to see what triangle makes the most sense. Now, it's just loads and loads of triangles, and DK basically does not tell us that he's using all of them, not by any means. He says, I can only give you a few of the more important triangles. That's basically what he's doing. But if we are flexible enough and we have our fifth ray down a bit, we know how to use it, we can understand the energies underlying the process. Is that clear? The energies underlying the process. Most processes have a beginning, middle, and end. 3 points. They have an inception. They have a kind of a middle point, which is a movement forward from the limitations of the inception. And they have a point of emergence or completion. Most processes have that kind of thing. And a triangle will be underlying that. Long ago, I told you, I used to live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I'd go out to a particular mountain, and I'd go out at 9 in the morning. I wouldn't get back until 5 in the afternoon, and just basically with my tape recorder at the time. And I went through all of these different triangles. And then my daughter, Heidi, who is a very good esoteric astrologer, she translated or typed out everything that I said about all these different triangles. And I hope I can find it. It's been a long time, maybe 30 years or almost 30 years. But I'd like to do something with that and make it available. And basically, it's all part of the law of mutation. Things are changing position, they're changing strength, they're changing their degree of domination or subservience. It's all in motion. And we're in the middle of all that flux, and it's happening right there in our astrological chart, too. Okay, so I think that's probably it now. Believe so, isn't it? I think so. And
Yes, that's all we've got.
that's it. That's it. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's just close with the Great Invocation. and I'll get us here somewhere. Okay. And tomorrow morning, reappearance of the Christ. It'll be a normal broadcast, and in the evening, we'll have identification as being. There's so many interesting things we could deal with there if we want to, if we're up to it. Okay. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Well, okay, everybody. Thank you for being here, and we'll just continue with our normal Ask program this week. Next week, I think we have the new moon, so it'll be maybe a little different. But tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. GMT, reappearance of the Christ. So lots of love to everybody from all of us on the communications group, and we really appreciate your presence. Many blessings, and we'll see you before long. This will be up on the Kara before long. Okay. We'll